This UFO news today is incredible. I did not see this coming. Matt Ford on his brilliant The Good Trouble show unveils some massive news from inside sources. RO, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, whose job it is to investigate anomalous objects flying around, swimming around, has some big questions to ask. You've got to listen to this. This is mind-blowing.
Now, what I'm about to tell you is from a very high-ranking source. Very high-ranking, that has given us information that is always panned out. This information is significant, and in my opinion, it demands a congressional investigation into ARROW. So, everyone pay attention. When ARROW was established, Ronald Moultrie also established an advisory council called ARROW Exec, or ARROW Executive Council, whose purpose was to provide oversight and guidance to ARROW, and was headed by Ronald Moultrie himself. The existence of this advisory board was nothing secret. Everybody knew about it on the Hill. Moultrie actually announced it in an official Pentagon memo that you can find on the internet. So Congress knew of its existence and who sat on the council. There was nothing to hide, but there has been something hidden from Congress. And here it is. When ARROW was formed by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, he assembled a separate secret council of advisors. A few people on Capitol Hill recently got wind of this and asked Kirkpatrick for the names of who was sitting on this secret council. Kirkpatrick refused to tell them. Why? I'll tell you why. Because some of these unelected officials who sit on this super secret advisory council are the actual gatekeepers of the legacy UAP crash recovery and back engineering program. I mean, seriously, talk about the fox guarding the hen house. You cannot make this shit up. And Dr. Kirkpatrick, sorry to break it to you, but these officials on Capitol Hill now have the list of names that are sitting on your little secret council. Congress and congressional staffers, this is really huge. It calls into question, what is going on at ARROW? Who is guiding it? And if you have one front-facing board that everyone knows about, but then you have something that's hidden from you and kept under wraps, and then you have at least two people that are gatekeepers to the legacy UAP crash retrieval and back engineering program. I mean, come on, you guys have to look into that. And this also brings into question whether we can trust Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick and ARROW, whether whistleblowers can go to ARROW and trust them. It's crazy.
So Amazon-owned Ring, the popular doorbell camera company, is offering $1 million prize to anybody who submits video that ends up proving unaltered video that proves the existence of ET. Has to be a pretty good UFO video, but again, that $1 million prize is now up for grabs. The other big UFO story is now scientists are saying that we should be looking underwater, deep underwater at some of the deepest points in the ocean for signs of extraterrestrial visitation. Pretty scary when you really combine these two things, deep seawater and aliens, like the movie The Abyss, except apparently real life. Many of these UFOs are spotted over the ocean and are seen diving under the surface with no visible disturbance to the surface of the water. Let me know what you think in the comments. And also, the last couple of videos, we gave you some updates on the rapidly expanding war in Israel and surrounding countries, right? Because Israel attacked southern Lebanon. Pretty soon we're going to be in a world war. Might be in a world war soon, folks. And also get my series, that's the live stream from earlier in the week. If you want to watch the whole thing, it's recorded. You can watch it, it's only a couple bucks. And thank you to everybody who's already gotten it. I greatly appreciate all the support, how wonderful.
unidentified flying objects, or UFOs, have captured the imagination of Americans for decades. But much of the conversation around UFOs has been confined to science fiction movies and novels, such as the 1982 hit E.T. In the absence of government commentary on the topic, conspiracy theories around the US concealing alien life and technology in secret compounds like Area 51 have run rampant. In fact, a 2019 poll found that 68% of respondents believed the US government knows more about UFOs than it's telling us. Earlier this year, conversation around UFOs reached a fever pitch after the US military shot down several unidentified objects in a matter of days.
It has happened again for the third day in a row and the fourth time in just 9 days. The United States has shot down an unidentified high-flying object.
One of the objects was later identified as a Chinese spy balloon. The rest, President Biden has said, are likely objects tied to private companies, recreation, or research institutions. In an attempt to be more transparent and address potential national security questions, the government has taken up the charge to publicize and legitimize the study of unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs, as the military has rebranded UFOs.
Today is the first hearing of its kind where we will attempt to get down to the bottom of what is actually happening with UAPs.
We want to shift the conversation about UAPs from sensationalism to science.
A 2022 UAP report published by U.S. intelligence stated that 195 of the incidents the office had examined could be attributed to ordinary explanations, like drones, balloons, and other objects including birds. However, another 171 incidents were labeled as uncharacterized, with some appearing to have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities that require further analysis.
We experienced was, like I said, well beyond the material science and the capabilities that we had at the time, that we have currently, or that we're going to have in the next 10 to 20 years.
I have been talking to aliens for over 10 years now. And there has been some incredibly shocking information that they have relayed to me so that I could relay it to humanity. If you want to know what the top 5 things are that they have told me, check out my most recent YouTube video today, and for whatever reason, if that's taken down, check it out on my website, elizabethapril.com. It's entitled The Top 5 Things I've Learned from Aliens. I will see you in the 5th dimension.
El notario público está. Estos especímenes no se pueden explicar o observar la imagen. En esta imagen se observaron 3 nuevos. Ahora sí que para que sea usted el que de su viva voz, evidentemente de la comunidad científica que lo desee, se acerque a conocer estos cuerpos de forma directa. El elemento que se está improvisando en el aparato. Sin embargo, desde abril de 2017 que viajamos al Perú, una igual, etc. Yo lo he dicho algunas veces y los aquí está, porque es más. Lo que compete a la Federación respiraron, que comieron, que habitaron en nuestro planeta allá en el desierto externa o de armado externo, por un solo cuerpo, un solo individuo, y que como ya fue comprobado en la tomografía, pues sí está compuesto de estructuras óseas. Incluso podemos ver aquí las personas secados que ya fueron extraídos de su ambiente de casa. Cuando el desierto de Nazca y de Palma del Perú era el fondo, un estudio que ya se nos había ocurrido hace algunos años de la ciencia, de participar en el estudio, José Sá. Ponga usted mucha atención, por favor.
With the recent release of Pentagon footage of unidentified aerial phenomena and things like Project Blue Book and ATIP and all of these various things, in your former position and currently with the current information that's released, what's your viewpoint on what these objects that seem to defy all laws of physics are?
That's a legitimate question now. And the short answer, but not the most meaningful one, is I don't know about this. But when I was president and I had a chief of staff, John Podesta, who loved science fiction, we made every attempt to find out everything about Roswell. And we also sent people to Area 51 to make sure there were no aliens in a deep because Area 51 is very important.
Who do you send to Area 51?
Oh, if I told you that. No, actually, I sent my Sandy Berger, who passed away sadly a couple of years ago, who was my national security advisor. But I said, we got to find out how we're going to deal with this, because that's where we do a lot of our invisibility research in terms of technology. Like, how do we fly airplanes that aren't picked up by radar and all that? So that's why they're so secretive. But there's no aliens, as I know. On the other hand, Hillary and I went to Hawaii in 2018 to the Big Island, where all the telescopes are on top of the mountain, you know, including the Keck telescope, the largest in the world. And several countries have scientific teams there. So after we toured the telescope, we went down and met with them. And I said, do you guys argue about the likelihood of life in outer space? He said, we have huge arguments. I said, you do? He said, oh, huge. I said, what's the range? He said, there are those of us who think it's 85% likely, and those of us who think it's 95%. He said, these are people who spend their lives doing this. He said, we think, in other words, it's very unlikely that there is not life. There are a billion, not a billion planets, a billion solar-like systems. There are lots of mysteries out there, which is why I think we should take good care of this planet. I think we ought to kind of hang on to it if we can. And I think, but I also think it should keep us humble. There's a lot of stuff we don't know.
Some very interesting UAP news today. In the recent Need to Know podcast with Bryce Zabel and Ross Coulthard, Ross mentioned Chuck Schumer's UAP non-human intelligence proposed amendments to the National Defense Authorization Act look more and more likely they may actually be passing into law. Ross Coulthard then goes on to state that he's been hearing lots of chatter about the proposed 9-person panel that'll be put in place to investigate the UAP issue. You need to listen. This is really interesting.
Look, I'm talking to people who have been approached, and there are people being approached and discussed about whether or not they would be willing to be involved. And if some of the people that I know about are involved, then I'm really happy. It's good. Now, if they do go ahead with the names that I'm aware of, it would be very, very positive, because they're honourable, decent people who I'm pretty sure would not put up with a cover-up. I don't think people realise that when Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, came up with that legislation, he didn't conceive it by himself. There have been very active negotiations ongoing between very senior people in the Congress, including Schumer, and the White House at National Security Council level. And I'm told Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, has been very heavily involved in consulting on this, as have been certain people, perhaps former presidents, who've been consulting on this as well. There is a determination on the Democrat side that this is an issue that is not going to be allowed to be buried yet again.
There was a woman who was a model who was in a plane. It just got released today. She got what they're calling some of the most compelling UFO video ever. She's flying in a plane in this silver thing. They freeze framed it. It looks like a flying disc.
A model saw this?
A model. She's just in a plane and filming out the window. And they had seen this thing apparently, and she's trying to film it, and it shoots by the plane. I mean, what in the fuck is that? That to me looks like it's from another fucking world. Like, if that's really what it looks like and it's actually flying like that.
One alien attack on Earth will make one world religion. It's a very good thought, brother. I wonder if they've actually hinted at something like this before. Let's take a look.
I couldn't help at one point in our discussions privately with General Secretary Gorbachev, when you stop to think that we're all God's children wherever we may live in the world, I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet, outside in the universe. We'd forget all the little local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings here on this earth together. We often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond.
Need it.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. But I've often wondered, what if all of us in the world discovered that we were threatened by a power from outer space, from another planet?
3 times.
Wouldn't we all of a sudden find that we didn't have any differences between us at all?
Listen
We
to this
were
last
all
part.
human beings, citizens of the world, and wouldn't we come together to fight that particular threat?
But who is this threat that could unite the entire world up against it? Is it aliens? Well, obviously, if you've seen any of my videos, you know I don't buy that for 1 second. But I want to read to you from Revelation 19:19. It says, "And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth with their armies gathered to make war against him who was sitting on the horse and against his army." Could it be that Satan is really deceiving people into fighting up against the Messiah when he returns? Well, I certainly think it's a possibility. And in my next video, I want to look at Hollywood and their role in all of this. And I also want to look at the New Jerusalem and how it ties into it all as well. So join me. Keep leaving these comments as well, guys, because we're in this together and I want to seek truth together. So I'll see you in the next video.
In July 2023, a U.S. carrier pilot encountered a UFO at an extremely high altitude. This testimony was shared with Ryan Graves, who recently tweeted this fascinating story. Here is a retelling of the encounter, along with photographs and footage taken during the event. I'm a major U.S. carrier captain. The following sighting occurred during one of my flights recently. Since I've shared my story, several other major U.S. carrier pilots have reached out to me and shared their similar experiences, including sharing their video recordings of these objects from the flight levels, all seen at the base of the Big Dipper. In the last week of July 2023, I departed Santo Domingo DR at 2300 hours, destined for New York JFK. My route of flight was L453 New York Oceanic Airspace, non-radar, hundreds of miles offshore. At approximately 1 hour to the flight as we were approaching the southern boundary of the New York Oceanic Airspace, and at 32,000 feet, I called out a visual on traffic that was excessively bright and looked like about 80 miles range, and then disappeared visually. I never saw the traffic on TCAS. And a few minutes later I saw 2 objects round in shape, one lighted and one not, flying in a formation just above the horizon, at a range I guessed of 120 to 200 nautical miles. The objects would illuminate to be as bright as a star for several seconds, then go dark for a few minutes, only to illuminate again. The brightness would vary from bright to very bright to dark. The color of the lighted object was white light. There was a second object you can clearly see in the photos that would follow the illuminated object, but it would not illuminate itself. Except for the 3:10 to 3:30 second point of my video, I think you can see the second object illuminate. This went on for the remaining 2 to 2.5 hours of my flight to New York on L453 in Oceanic Airspace. After reviewing the photos, I think the objects might have been a bit further away, but distance is very difficult to gauge at night. I have the brand new Samsung S23 phone, which has the best camera on the market for a cell phone, and I started recording this object in video. I have a great 7-minute video of it appearing and disappearing while I was talking to other airliners on radio about it. I also took about 30 photos of these objects in night mode on the phone, and they came out really good. In one of them you can actually see the lighted object and the unlit object very clearly as round metallic objects. All of the photos were taken with some sort of long exposure setting to be able to get as much light as possible to the sensor. You will be able to see in the long exposure photos the stars are pins of light, but the UFOs are streaks of light because they are moving. It is actually amazing. All of this happened over about a 2.5 hour flight and continued for the entirety of our flight. The light seemed to be on or just above the horizon until we got closer to our destination of New York. Just prior to beginning our descent, the objects appeared much higher in the sky, 80 to 90 degrees above the horizon and much further away, actually, out of the atmosphere. It's stories like these that have us wondering,
are they really here?
Fuck. Fuck, it's gone.